Welcome to Fungos and Footnotes, the podcast where baseball meets the deeper side of the game. This show is for players, parents, and coaches who care about more than just box scores. We talk development, recruiting, mindset, leadership, and the lessons baseball teaches us that last long after the final out. Because the game shapes you and the footnotes matter. Let's get into it.
All right. Today's episode is going to be about playing time, right? So every family and player feels like playing time is unique to their situation. And playing time can be personal because it feels that way, but in reality, it's not. Almost every coach has the same conversation. And basically, that centers around practice habits, how productive the player can be, whether it's pitching, hitting, fielding. What do they bring to the table? What skill set are they bringing to the table? And so that's what makes every situation unique. And, what is your team blend? If you have 9 outstanding defensive players and no offensive guys, then we need to, build our team around pitching and defense. Then we're going to have to do some alternative things offensively. So every situation is unique. Every player is unique. And not every fit is going to be perfect for every player. So, and that will affect their playing time. So let's get into the conversation about playing time.
Let's get into it. How playing time is actually earned. T, you've been around the game a long time. Let's take it from the top. Let's talk about practice habits. How do players actually wrap their head around practice habits?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Some of the best players I ever had didn't necessarily have the greatest practice habits in team practice, but I can assure you those guys were the guys that stayed late and worked extra almost every single time. Where their practice habits work great in the team setting is because they felt like the team setting parts were not the weaker parts of their game. So whatever we were approaching that day, maybe it's bunt coverage or maybe it's holding runners or the running game itself, their practice habits in those days may not have been great. Because they felt like maybe their offensive part of their game was something they needed to improve. So you could count on those guys not giving you a great practice during the official scheduled practice time, but those guys would be there late, hitting, working on what they felt like was their personal deficiency. One of the best outfielders I ever had play for me, when we were doing outfield drills, I didn't get a lot of effort out of that guy, but that guy was an elite defender. Even though his practice habit in the department wasn't great, he was naturally gifted, but he worked on his game as much or more than anybody. He was the first guy to practice, the last guy to leave. I had numerous conversations with him about his effort level on some of our drill work, and some of the drill work he felt like was beneath him. He did it without barking because he was a great teammate. But his effort level, I knew he had more in the tank. So I think we need to convince our players that our practice habits and effort level are important for 2 reasons. Number one, we have to show the coach and our teammates that we're willing to go the extra mile. Luckily, these guys were in a college setting where I had a large body of practice and game time to judge their performance. So they didn't negatively impact the team with their less than stellar practice habits. They did make up for some of that with their extra work, but I think from the player's perspective and the parent perspective, hey, we need to have elite level practice habits on the field and off the field. And off the field is really going to show up big time in today's world because baseball is everywhere from the age of about 6 all the way to 18. There's so many opportunities, so many teams. It's really watered down, but nobody gets passed on an opportunity. There's opportunity for everyone. So you have to set yourself apart. The way you're going to do that is in your practice habit, on the field, and what you're doing in the background off the field. I know we talked about that briefly in session 1, but if you're not willing to put in the time that it takes in the weight room, getting good sleep, getting good nutrition, or on your craft, whether it's pitching or hitting or defending. If you're not willing to put that time in, you're going to get passed up at some point in time.
It goes back to what the old adage is: you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back on previous training. And so I would
Ooh, right.
also echo the fact that shortcuts don't win championships. We talked about the blue chip player on episode 1, but the reality is your teammates see that. They see
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're slacking off whenever you're doing PFP drills or outfield drills, to your example. How do you, as a coach, how do you reinforce? You mentioned that you have the one-on-one conversations, but in terms of building team trust, how do you take that individual player and then bring that back into a team environment? T, in your example of the outfielder, you mentioned that you have one-on-one conversations, or you did have one-on-one conversations with him talking about work ethic. How do you have that individual conversation as a coach, but then also build that back into the team environment to encourage other players, for lack of better words, not to be like that guy slacking off in the defensive drills?
Right. It's a balance for sure, because that guy's going to produce in the game every time, and he did. It was more, and every player's different. So if you have a good feel for your relationship with the player, I basically made the player understand that he's not just helping himself, helping the entire team when he, gets after it in practice, even if he feels like the drill is beneath him or his skill level is such that he doesn't need to work on that. He needs to focus on something else. Um, and he understood the importance. People that are highly skilled, they're naturally, or because they've worked at it and earned it, they're usually used to and have had a large amount of success in their life. They understand the accolades that can come from success. So winners. And if you can convince that player that, hey, in order for our team to be a winner, we need you to be a winner in practice, not just in the game. It's not too difficult um, to take a player with that kind of ability and convince that guy that, hey, we need to be, and we don't have to be a leader necessarily, but we need to lead by example, and the others will follow, especially when you're productive in the game setting.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the emotional control of a player. You know you're a good player. You know that you don't have to take the maximum reps or opportunities to give 100%. But then there's the other guy on the other side that he has to use every single rep to maximize potential, to not only be seen by the coach, but also as a leader. And we can talk about quiet leadership, leading by action over being a vocal leader in another episode. However, let's talk about the emotional control and the way that you pull that out from a coach's perspective as you determine playing time, as you start looking at how do you actually build your roster. What does that look like? Because a lot of people don't actually talk about that from a coach's perspective. Would love to hear your example from college and then kind of move that into the high school scenario.
Well, I will say that in college, thing that I tried to look at when it came to recruiting was motor, right? You don't know a player's personality when you're just watching their game, but what kind of motor do they have? How much energy expenditure is there in the game? And I don't mean, are they, you know, busting tail on and off the field necessarily, or are they running out the weekly hit ground ball? Certainly that's a factor. Every coach is going to pay attention to that because it does lead to an overall assessment of what is your commitment level, right? If you're not committed to running out a ground ball hard, then I'm not sure your commitment level is going to be where I'm going to need it to be. But you can look at their body action and their body language and their effort to understand what kind of player that is. So typically you don't run into a lot of that on the college side. From the high school perspective, I tried to make sure that my players understood that every time you're on the field, it's an audition. And when the ball is not around you, it matters. right? If you're gonna dog the backup when the ball isn't really to you, right fielder, pick off at first. If you're not going to break when you see the pitcher break, and you're not going to put forth the effort until you see the ball got by, that is going to be a very negative reflection on your engagement, how reliable you're going to be as a player. And that, how important is it to you, right? I mean, it's got to be important enough. I want you to think about the coach's perspective on the college side, right? We're counting on 18 to 22-year-old guys who, let's be, frank here, on the college side, most experts will tell you that the male brain reaches its full maturity and development about 26, 27. So you're asking guys who may not be fully mature to go out there and perform at a level that you can keep your job and you can feed your family. And so they have to be bought in. And those are the kind of players you have to look for in the recruiting game. And so you have to convince your high school players that those are the kind of players that are going to have a chance to continue to play in this game. So they need to develop those habits, because it's ultimately a habit, right? How hard you go out there and play the game is a habit, right? When the ball is not near you, are your actions attractive? What kind of teammate are you? All that stuff plays in. And so we have to develop those good habits on the field. And certainly our off the field habits are going to have an effect on if we're going to perform well, during our game time. And then from the youth perspective, those are the same traits high school coaches are looking for, right? What kind of habits do they have? Can greatly aid ourselves in developing those habits as a youth player. And I do think on the youth side, parents, when coaches try to instill those, sometimes parents may push back because maybe the player may be really good, but we need to rotate and we need to give every kid some opportunity. And so, little Jimmy may have to sit on the bench for a little while, and some parents get upset by that because maybe little Jimmy's the best player. But in all fairness, you need to try to give every kid an opportunity to develop and rotate through. And so parents can also guide those players in developing those good habits, even at the youth age. So.
Absolutely. For me personally, as a player and as a coach, I think one thing that whenever we talk about playing time from a perspective of the player is we do not only think about entitlement, but the root of it is identity. If your identity is wrapped up into the game of baseball, quite frankly, you're going to be in a rude awakening when you have to sit on the bench, because your entirety of your life, and I'm a huge baseball guy, T, you're a huge baseball guy. Baseball is certainly part of our lives. But if we're being honest, from a playing time perspective, the entitlement shows if you're sitting on the bench and you start having a bad attitude. Because to me, as a coach and as a player, I saw that. But if your identity is wrapped up into the game and that's who you think you are, is your entitlement to play and start every single game of the season, that's going to negatively affect your team. And let's be honest, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the mindset of what it takes to not fully have your identity into the game of baseball, even though we all love it that are hosting this podcast and listening to it. But fighting the entitlement game also plays into how are you as a person. And especially you, one thing that you said was coaches balance teams, not feelings. I think that we can easily get wrapped up into the emotional aspect of the game of why is my son not playing? Mom and dad, why am I not playing? Well, I don't know. Have you talked to your coach about it? Well, no, I haven't talked to coach about it. Well, maybe that would be the first step. If you're in the off season or if you're going into season and you find yourself in a position where you're unsure, Coach T, how valuable would it be for little Johnny to come to your office and say, Coach T, what can I work on? Why am I not getting
100%.
more reps? What would you say to that?
I'll be honest, right? Because we're doing a disservice from the coaching aspect if we're not honest with our players, right? If we sugarcoat stuff um, in order to make it easier, then I don't think we're going to get the best development out of our player, right? A kid comes to me and says, "Man, coach, I've hit a tough stretch, and I just got benched, and I'm having a hard time getting back in there." Hey, bottom line is we need to improve our practice habit, and that will improve our performance. Number one, parents come to you and say, hey, how come, Johnny's not getting an opportunity, at shortstop? Johnny gets an opportunity at shortstop every single practice, and he hasn't performed. But if you're not running an efficient practice, rotating the kids through properly, you're not going to have that background to draw upon. So now you're going to have to sugarcoat some garbage answer for the parents. So, but I do think players that feel like, hey, I should start and play every inning of every game, those guys, if they conduct themselves in practice, and I'm going to use a great example here without using any names, a player who was on the Golden Spikes Award list for the top college player in the country, junior college player. He was on the list as a junior college player, which is very rare. Played almost every single inning of every single game on his junior college team, was a All-American. I went to LSU and did not play a ton last year at LSU. He did play some, but he was definitely not an everyday starter. I'm sure that was a bit of a culture shock for that player, but I can tell you what it didn't do because I know that player personally. It didn't stop that guy from working his tail off every single practice, every single day in the weight room, every single day in the classroom. That guy got after it, and he got rewarded with some playing time and with some time in the World Series, quite honestly. Was it as much as he wanted? I'm sure it wasn't because he's a competitor. He wanted to play every inning of every game. But they also had an All-American in front of them. So it's just what it is. If you're not the kind of player that can accept that fact, understand that fact, and you're going to dog your practice time, you're going to find yourself in the portal, or you're going to find yourself looking for another select team or another youth team. He's not that kind of player, and I expect he'll have a big year this year. And again, a lot of that goes to what's your makeup? Are you willing to compete for it or not? If you're not willing to compete for it, there's 2,000 players in the portal, and there's a reason there's 2,000 players in the portal because most of those guys aren't willing to compete for it. So, and that goes back to our society in general with the entitlement, attitude. And I think we have to start addressing it in the younger age groups quickly. And unfortunately, as coaches, we can't do it by ourselves. We have to have some parental help, especially at the young ages.
Absolutely. And to that point, whenever you think about playing time from a youth perspective in a high school bowl, you have to want it, number one, but number two, you have to earn it. It's not just a handout for you to be in the starting nine every single game. And I think that that's really what we're talking about. Do you want to just be in the lineup to be in the lineup, or are you actually putting in the work individually so that the entire team can feel supported and be motivated to continue, right? We always talk about thing in the lights, but not a lot of people talk about when the lights are off, right? When it's not
Yep.
game time, practice
Yep.
time. That's what really propels players forward. It's the practice time, it's the reps, it's earning your keep, not only for yourself, but as a team. And then as you continue to practice and you continue to earn your keep, now the coach sees that. So, T, let's talk about playing time from the perspective of the coach's eyes. How do you identify players in the offseason and then start preparing for that game one in the springtime?
So I want to tell you a quick story first before we dive into that. So it's not just necessarily about playing time at all times, especially in the youth game. So uh, on the youth side, I did have a couple of kids on the last youth team I coached that were um, more physically gifted, had a little bit more skill level than the majority of the players on the team, which you're going to find that on just about every team you're on. And they played quite a bit right out of the gate. And then we got into a position where, we're playing a couple of three teams where I know we're going to have a chance to compete, even if they're not on the field the entire game. And I told those guys, hey, look, times are going to change here a little bit. I'm going to start rotating other guys in there. And here's the bottom line, right? You guys are the top guys on the team on the skill aspect and the performance aspect on the field. You better be the top guys on the team in the performance aspect in the dugout. I'm counting on you to be the biggest cheerleaders for your teammates when you're in that dugout. And I know you're a little sour over it. If you want to maintain your on the field performance and on the field time. So I'm going to put the onus on them to make themselves that kind of player because they've never been challenged in the path before. So for me, on the practice side, I think you can take that into the same account. You can go to those top guys and say, hey, look, if I don't get the best effort I've had out of you this season on the practice field, then I'm not going to give you the opportunity this weekend in our tournament or whatever it may be. I think you can drive those guys. The guys that bust their tail and they're not there on the skill level, we can reward those guys too. Let's be honest. And I've said it before. We're on the youth side. If you're not playing, majors level baseball by the, time you're 12 years old or whatever, you're going to get passed up. That's nonsense. On the youth side, every kid develops at a different period. They go through puberty at different times. So I think from the parent perspective, when their player doesn't play every inning of every game, they immediately say, well, I'm going to find another team. A lot of times that may be a good opportunity because definitely we want our kids to be getting repetition that they need and the game action too. I think what you really should look for from the parental side is coaches that are going to challenge my player, coaches that are going to have organized, well operated practices where my kid gets a ton of reps, and coaches who recognize and rotate players in the game, even if my kid doesn't play every game, that ultimately the coach cares enough to put together a quality practice plan. The coach cares enough for every kid on the team to rotate, even if my kid's not the top. That's what the parent should be looking for, not I got to be on a AAA team or I got to be on a majors level team or I got to be on this team because they won this and they did this. Chasing the excellence. I think you chase excellence in practice, you chase excellence off the field, and then the results will come out and show. So, and a great example of that is my youth team, the last youth team I coached, from the 11U year all the way through 14U year. There was a team in our area. We played them every single weekend. We never beat those guys. 11U, 12U, 13U, 14U. We went extra innings with them one day at 14, and the game went like 12 innings, a championship game, and we had a chance to win. I tried to score a guy, on a ball hit to the fence, and their outfielder made a perfect throw and threw us out in like the 10th, and they ended up, beating us pretty good in 12, and that was as close as we ever got. We're 15 years old. I had some more maturity, physical maturity. More guys got there. We continued to grind and work hard in practice. We snuck by them when we were 15, 2-0, and that team never beat us again. We probably beat that team 10 times throughout the high school age brackets. Every one of those times was an important time for team, purpose. It was a, playoff or whatever. So, putting in your time in practice, knowing the long-term goal is far more important than today's goal at 12. Today's goal at 12 doesn't need to be getting some championship ring. Today's goal at 12 is needing to be to get ourselves in a position to move up to the bigger field at 13. And then at 13, it should be getting ourselves in position to move up to the bigger field at 14. And at 14, it should be getting ourselves in position to make the high school team. I promise you, when you make the high school team, the coach doesn't care how many championships you won at 12. The coach doesn't care if you played AA baseball at 12 or if you played majors, level baseball at 12. So we have to refocus not just our players, but our parents. What is the goal, right? Every season has a goal. What's our goal today at practice? What's our goal tonight in lessons? What's our goal for this season? And it's not championship rings at 12 years old. I can assure you that. So
absolutely. See, it's so important for us to recognize that it takes effort. It takes effort to do anything in life, but most importantly, out of everything you said, I agree with it wholeheartedly. I would just double down on one thing that we haven't said specifically in this way is love the game.
100%.
If you love the game, you're going to understand that there is an effort that you have to play in different seasons, right? From youth ball to high school ball to collegiate baseball, if you make it that far. But the key is whenever you lose sight of why you even play the game in the first place, that's when all of these other things start snowballing because you've taken the love out of the game. That's why we're hosting this podcast for our listeners so that they understand that it's not about, like you said, chasing the logos or chasing the hype or wondering why Johnny's doing this and Sally's doing this, right? So the idea of maintaining an effective way of composure and putting in the work in whatever age bracket you're in, but loving the game so that you remember why you even put on your cleats in the first place. Whenever you do that, that's when stories like yours comes out where you say, for 4 years, I couldn't beat this team. And this was the year that it changed everything. And then you just see the progression of that because number one, they put in the effort when nobody's watching. They worked hard, they practiced hard, and they showed up. And that's just the way baseball goes. But also, as a coach, you put into the player's mind, hey guys, we're going to work hard. We're going to work our tails off, but we're going to do it in a way that you remember why you even put your cleats on in the first place.
I told those players, on that specific team, hey, look, we're not going to allow ourselves to get a mental block that every time we play these guys, we're going to lose. Address the deficiencies that we have. We're going to address the problems that came up the season in the game. We're going to address that, and we're going to continue to work past that. And at some point, we're going to pass those guys up because we're just going to outwork them. Proved to be true, and especially with that group because, like I said, they never beat us again after the 15U season. But that was always a benchmark for our team, and I tried to use that to fuel those guys to make sure I got great effort out of them in practice and hard work. And I also had a lot of parent support. I told the parents before the season, hey, if we play 4 games in a weekend, we have accomplished what we need to accomplish. We don't need to play 5 games on Sunday so we can win some $3 ring, right? I rotated all of the players fairly equally all of the season. I gave every kid opportunity to pitch. Every kid played every position. I made sure that we gave every kid the opportunity and the repetition that they needed to get to the level where they could contribute at whatever position they sifted into. I didn't start going position specific with those guys till they were 13. When we got on the bigger field, arm strength played a lot of part in that. Foot speed played a part in that. But ultimately, my goal was about the preparation and about the effort level and about learning the game at every position. I think, even if you don't play that position, you should understand how the game goes, what goes into being that type of positional player. And then when we started to sift into those singular positions, I didn't get any pushback from any of the parents. And every kid made their high school team, and quite honestly, every kid but one played college baseball. So, and that was just a neighborhood 12-year-old team that came from rec ball, right? So it can be done. And I think parents need to find coaches that are willing to put that kind of effort in, motivate kids in the way, and their experience in this game will be a lot better than the ones that are out there chasing the rings on Sunday, for sure.
Absolutely. Playing time changes, but habits last. And that's what we're
Yes.
talking about when we talk about the things behind the lines, the things behind the box score, the ideas of how do we actually prepare well for playing time? How do we prepare well for the spring season? And I love the idea of what you were talking about, T, about this idea of, hey, we just had players that worked hard from a
Yes.
recreational league and we developed them and we executed, and then that led to great
And it took
success.
time, right? It wasn't immediate. In fact, it took 3 years, right? Well, 4 years, 11U, 12U, 13U, 14U, so it took 4 years to get there. But the other thing, when you have, some attitude, uh, you know, sulking problems, or, that entitlement, uh, area there, I think we addressed it early, um, with those kids. Most of those kids played because they loved the game, especially, when I got them at 11 years old, they loved baseball. And I think the parents bought in on the team approach. And so we didn't have to battle that. But I can tell you that, your attitude and your effort level, those are totally controlled by the individual. Certainly the coach might have some ability to manipulate those things. Like Bobby Knight, the great Indiana basketball coach, he said the greatest motivator was the bench. He may not have said it quite as nice as I said it. I think he threw in a few more colorful expletives there, but and I don't necessarily agree with maybe all of his coaching methods, and certainly not his motivating methods necessarily. But he's right. Is a motivator, but attitude and effort level are totally controllable by the player, and it starts when they're young. And I think our parents need to grab hold of that when their kids are young, for sure. I think it gets overlooked quite a bit. They expect the coach to take care of that. While the coach can manipulate that, ultimately it comes down to the parent. I think uh, long term, attitude and body language have a huge effect on your ability to get on the field as a high school player or make the high school team. And then certainly if you're going to have any opportunity to play beyond that, it's a huge factor. No college coach is going to want to deal with attitude problems or poor body language. It doesn't fit the team concept. It doesn't fit the culture that they're looking for, and so they're just going to pass it up, continue their search. Thousands and thousands and thousands of high school graduates every year looking for an opportunity to play college baseball. I don't have to settle for a guy that has a great talent level, who has bad practice habits, bad body language, bad attitude. I can find that other player who's a comparable player that has a good attitude, has good body language. So I think that's going to be your final determining factor, in addition to or equal to your skill. I think parents, we need to address that right out of the gate when they're young. And if your coach is unwilling to address it, I think, we need to find another team, another coach, for sure.
I
So,
love what you said too about the bench being the greatest motivator. I think when
Bobby Knight said that, not me, but it is true.
true. Well, you said that. Well, you were referencing him, but at the end of the
Yes.
day, when you put that into perspective about what you said, just to double down on, you said to control effort, attitude, and habits. And I think that if you utilize that analogy, if you think of the bench not as punishment, but as a wake up call to say, what do I need to work on? Rather
Yes.
than why is it for me? That's whenever you can go to the coach and you say, hey, coach, I noticed I'm on the bench. What can I work on? But do it in a proactive way. Do it in a healthy way, right? Don't come at the coach like he's the enemy. Come at it as, hey, coach, let me tell you where I think I stand or how to get better so that I can make the starting nine or I can be your clutch pitcher from the bullpen. There are ways to ask the coach effectively how to increase playing time without being judgmental about it. Why am I on the bench, coach? That's not helpful. But when we think
Absolutely.
about it in terms of, hey, coach, what can I work on to be a guy that you can count on? And especially as we walk into the spring season, that's the mindset that you need to have. You're not always going to play. There are very few guys that play every inning of every single game. So the reality is you're going to sit on the bench. Use the bench time to be proactive as a player, be a cheerleader on the team, not in the hoop and holler, but just be accountable to yourself, be accountable to your team and to your coach, and show him that you're putting in the effort and ask the question in a healthy way. Say, hey, coach, what can I work on to get better?
100%. Any kid asks me what they need for more playing time, I'm going to be honest. It's my job as the coach to guide that player, right? That's what coaches do. Ultimately, the player is going to have to put forth the effort, put in the time. But I'm going to tell them, hey, I'd love to get you in there, right? In the sixth, seventh inning. But hey, we got too many walks. I can't, a guy that has a lot of walks, I may have to start that guy so I can go get them before we get into a position where the game is going to be out of hand one way or the other. And when they have a good day, I can leave them a little longer. When they have a poor day, I can go get them. But it's hard for me to use that guy as a reliever because when you bring the reliever in, you got to have strikes. So I can tell kids honestly, tell players honestly, hey, here's what I see, here's what I think. And if you want help getting there, here's what I prescribe on the help side. I don't think it's, look for the word I'm looking for. I don't think it's unrealistic for the player or the parent to ask those questions. I do think it's unrealistic for the parent to ask those questions when the player's about, 12 or 13 and up. I think the player needs to come first. Granted, there may need to be some discussion between the parent and the coach after the age of 13, but it needs to be initiated by the player first, in my opinion. And the other thing too, I think parents and players both often get skewed by the stats sometimes. I mean, every team's got game changer or some sort of a stat making thing. And I don't mean people are over there cooking the books. I mean, for example, I've had players come to me before and say, I'm hitting in the 7 hole, but I'm 320, and the guy in the 4 hole is, hitting 265. Why? What's going on? The guy in the 4 hole batting average position, maybe 410, right? That guy's super clutch. And yes, granted, you're hitting 340, but 90% of those hits come with 2 outs and nobody on. So the production level is different, but parents look at, whatever preferred stat they want to look at. And so sometimes there's just a misunderstanding. And if the player will approach the coach, it's easy to address those misunderstandings. And it's easy for me as a coach to talk to the player about, here's why we're where we are in the lineup, or here's where we are on the playing time. And here's how we're going to address it. And so I don't think that's unreasonable for those conversations to happen. Coaches who are unwilling to address that, I don't think they coach for very long. And I know they don't have a lot of success, right? Because they're just not going to stay in the game long enough to attain any level of success. So I don't think it's out of the question for parents and players to ask those questions. And I think proactive players and parents who do ask those questions will see success from the player much quicker because they will be able to address those deficiencies.
Absolutely. Players, control your effort, your attitude, and habits. Parents listening, let the season breathe. Encourage your son to approach the coach in a healthy way, to lay that groundwork so that we can all make sense of it together. And whenever we do that, we can then just know that the season is going to build itself. Baseball is one of those games with long seasons right? Major League Baseball has 162 games. So high school seasons, same thing. College programs, let the season evolve into what it's going to be. But as a player, be proactive. As a parent, also be proactive in supporting your player to do things the right way, because that's only going to make every single youth, high school, and college team better in the long run. So, T, as we close out today's episode, I would just echo what you said. The season rewards patience and not panic. If you're in baseball, you're not alone.
Right. And it also rewards what people don't see. What are you doing off the field? Right. So individually. So if you're encouraging your child to put in some extra work, you're going to reap the benefits of that. It may not be immediately, but down the road, you will see the benefits of that 100%.
Absolutely. So. On this episode, we've talked about playing time. Come back next week. We're going to talk about development versus winning, and we're going to unpack that from an individual perspective and a team perspective. This is Fungos and Footnotes, baseball reps and real lessons. Thanks for listening to Fungos and Footnotes. This episode helps you see the game or your role in it a little more clearly. Share it with someone who loves baseball too. Subscribe, follow along, and stay connected, because the game doesn't just reveal talent, it reveals character, and the footnotes matter.